So for today, it's going to be another tournament stream with myself and Dactor streaming the Ranked League Champions number 7, where the top 8 players available on my ranked ladder come together to play in a standard best of 3 style tournament for the grand prize of $5. So I'm expecting some pretty fun games today. We have the people that have signed up on screen right now. So if there's any player that you are interested in seeing, make sure to check them out. If we miss any of the games, then if we miss any of the games going forwards, you can actually you might be able to see some of them casted on Rubber Duck's a Rubber Duck of War's YouTube channel, since we will be sending most of our replays to him so that he can cover more of the games in the tournament today. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the first game. And here we go. Going to be the match queen. Completely forgot to change my settings, but here we go. It's going to be the first match against Legion and the Viking. Legion coming in with the Tomb Kings and the Viking with Bretonia. Which faction would you like to cover first, Actor?
I suppose I'll go over the Tomb Kings. So, we see Ark in the Black with Spirit Leech and Purple Son of Xerxes. Very interesting. Then we have double Tomb Prince to fight the Foot Squad. We have a couple of Ushabti Greatbow, including the Chosen of the Gods Ushabti Greatbow ROR. We have a few Skeleton Horse Archers, looks like 2 in total. 1 Skeleton Horseman. A Tomb Scorpion, and in fact it looks like 2 Tomb Scorpions, just to, again, fight the Hero Squad and kick them out of their little blob. Then we have just a bunch of chaff. Skeleton Spearmen, Skeleton Warriors, and let's see, is there any quality here whatsoever? No, indeed there is not. So, pretty straight up build, just going to be trying to protect the Ushabti Greatbow so that they can kill all the Cav and then kill the Hero Squad with the Tomb Princes and Tomb Scorpions. So, what do the Bretonians have to counter this?
Well, for the Bretonians, we are indeed seeing the usual hero group. Going to be the Fey Enchantress with her AoE Mortis Engine effect to clear out the chaff, Paladin to fight out single entities, and a Grail Relique to provide some leadership to the frontline infantry forces. Not to mention Gotrek, too, really rounding things out. And it does look like he has an interesting ability here. He does have... Okay, no, that's just his healing ability. Now, for the infantry of the Bretonians, it is fairly thin, but a little bit... never mind. Instead of fielding any peasants, it seems like the Bretonians have gone for battle pilgrims and men-at-arms polearms to hold down the front line. Vastly stronger than the Tomb King's front line, with peasant bowmen, pox arrows in the back, just to provide poison damage. Since there's only 2 archers, they won't be doing a ton of damage, even if they do get firing. And on the flank in the forest, we're seeing where most of the money went. Going to be 2 questing knights with their high AP damage, and 2 knights of the realm to shut down various targets for the Tomb Kings. That looks like it's going to be it for both players. There's also a sneaky vanguard of skeleton horsemen in the back. How do you feel about this matchup, and specifically about the men-at-arms polearms here?
They're an interesting inclusion. I actually have not seen them really before. I have to imagine they're just to catch out constructs like maybe those Tomb Scorpions if they happen to overextend. I know the Battle Pilgrims are actually relatively good here. I played this matchup a little bit, and I know some really good players like to spam them against Tomb Kings just to cut through the Tomb King's chaff and exploit their weakness against quality infantry in general. And I will say, it seems like the Fey and the Paladin coming in on horseback is maybe a little bit unexpected. However, Gotrek, still on foot, should be susceptible to being kicked out of the hero blob by the Scorpions, and I think that's probably the biggest key to this game, actually, is if Legion can effectively charge Gotrek out and snipe him, then he has a pretty good shot. But if Gotrek is allowed to get value over the course of this game, I think he'll do very well, and the Bretonians probably will do very well in turn.
Yeah, especially if they can clear up all that Tomb King's infantry. Now, for the beginning of the game, we're seeing some early skirmishing. The Paladin actually taking a surprisingly high amount of damage from the Ushabti to start off with, and some of the Battle Pilgrims getting poked down along the flanks from the Skeleton Horse Archers, but not enough damage to really stop the initial charge. And here we go, the battle's going to be getting underway. The Tomb Scorpions diving into the Men-at-Arms, seeing if they can win this initial frontline engagement.
Yeah, and that would certainly be very valuable for the Tomb Kings. I think the Bretonians will actually struggle quite a bit if they're forced to grind through the Tomb King's chaff in order to get onto their monsters and Ushabti. This is kind of a rush build from the Bretonians, despite the inclusion of 2 peasant bowmen. So they will be pressured to advance as quickly as possible. Now we will see actually the Paladin going really deep into this backline and getting surrounded by all of these single entities on the Tomb King's side, and actually the Paladin might be getting picked off here almost immediately as a Dwellers Below goes down. I don't think it's going to do the most damage to these single entities, but I suppose it will slow them down a bit. But yeah, the Paladin getting picked off so early is a really nice opening move for the Tomb Kings. Now Gotrek, stuck in there against Tomb Scorpions, he's actually doing some pretty good damage, but you have to imagine that he's going to be taking a lot of damage in return as well.
Yeah, there is still healing from the Fey Enchantress, and without enough focus fire, he will still be pretty hard to deal with. The Paladin looking like he might rally too, so it's not entirely over for Bretonia here. Especially with the cavalry now coming in along the flanks. They will be able to jump the Ushabti, but the ammunition usage on them has already been pretty high. Which means that they've already gotten in quite a bit of value going into the mid-game. As for the 2 Tomb Princes, they're actually still alive, and the Bretonian frontline is sort of beginning to stall just a tiny bit.
Yeah, they are breaking through a little bit. Now, a Purple Son of Xerxes is going down on top of some Questing Knights, and some Men-at-Arms Polearms. Going to be doing some pretty good damage, actually. Oh man, that is a great cast. It nukes the Questing Knight and 2 Men-at-Arms with Polearms, so getting a ton of value out of that Purple Sun. Definitely not an ability you see very often. In the meantime, Gotrek getting compromised and not able to actually get in his full damage onto these Ushabti Greatbow, and both the Ushabti Greatbow have stabilized on the back, so I think this is looking very good right now for Legion.
Yeah, Gotrek getting a little bit overextended. If it was just 2 Tomb Scorpions, he would have a little bit of a better chance. But the 2 Tomb Princes plus Arkin the Black Spirit Leeching is likely going to be a bit too much for him. He'll get knocked over a ton, and he won't be able to get as much damage.
Oh, he got the heal proc.
Ooh,
he got the heal proc.
Definitely big, but still taking another hit. He's still on the verge of death.
Ooh.
And that looks like it's going to be it for poor old Gotrek, despite
and he will die.
The good RNG. Now the Fey Enchantress will be able to crumble the front line, but the Bretonian front line has actually gotten pretty battered up just thanks to the summons and the spells from the Tomb Kings. And despite most of the front line getting cleared out, the halberds still aren't really able to jump on the Ushabti Greatbow. In fact, Chosen of the Gods actually almost at no ammunition now. This is looking like it will likely be the end of the Bretonians, especially with the Paladin now getting chased off.
Yeah, and the Ushabti summon in the middle there, catching out the Fey Enchantress and forcing the Bretonians to send some cavalry to support her was a really nice play. The Chosen of the Gods are out of ammunition. The other Ushabti still have actually quite a bit of ammo left. They don't have a ton of targets to shoot at, but that's actually a good thing for the Tomb Kings because all the Bretonians really have left is their cheap infantry, and while it is a little more quality than usual, it's still not high quality enough to deal with a bunch of Tomb King's monsters. So unless the Fae pulls out the ultimate hard carry, I don't really see the Bretonians coming back into this game.
Yeah, and sadly her combat stats, although still fairly good, definitely not enough to take on these 2 Tomb Princes, let alone another pair of Tomb Scorpions. The Grail Relique too, just not really providing enough leadership to these Men-at-Arms Polearms. They still rout regardless because of that. And with the huge single entity advantage coming in from Legion, this game it's mostly just closing it out. There's not a whole ton here. Not a lot of swing plays that can really come down from Bretonia, because really it is just a ton of single entities. Really just the worst matchup the Enchantress could go up against, and some nice sniping on the key targets like Gotrek and the Paladin, which would be giving this group a much harder time.
Yep. Definitely, I think the key to this game for the Tomb Kings was that they were able to keep their Shopti Grapo online all game and really just wear down the Bretonian cavalry over the course of the game. And without their cavalry, the Bretonians really aren't that scary. So the Bretonians were forced to make some desperation plays with Gotrek diving him way into the back line, and with that he got picked off. And so now the Tomb Kings have officially taken this game, and Legion goes up 1-0 in this series.
Yeah, pretty decisive. It didn't feel like Legion was too much on the ropes for much of that game. Even when Gotrek did dive in onto the back line, he never caught any Ushapti. And if we just look at the damage values real quick, you can see that the Battle Pilgrims are quite effective. They did manage to get their value in. But looking at Gotrek and that Paladin, they really did not pay for themselves. So there we go. Going to be one game down and on to the next one.
Which side would you like to go over here?
Well, I guess I'll start off with the Norscan side. Looking at 4 units of Marauder Berserkers. Will be very nice for winning the frontline fight, as long as they get a little bit of support from the other Norscan elements. In this case, it's going to be 3 Armored Skin Wolves, one of which being the ROR. Good for counter skirmish, since usually the Greenskin skirmishers don't have a ton of AP. The Marauder Horsemen here too, to make sure that the Berserkers are safe. You really don't want them to be getting shot by skirmishers. And also now getting deployed, it's looking like Wulfric the Wanderer on horse, or maybe even on foot. Oh wow, it's actually, no, it's Wulfric on a horse, and a Shaman Sorcerer of Metal on a chariot, with just 2 cheap spells, Plague of Rust and Searing Doom, I guess to tip the fight in the favor of the Berserkers, but that does feel a little bit off meta. Not even a final transmutation for blobs. We'll see how that plays out. Now for the Greenskins, what are we seeing?
So we will see Wurzag coming in here with Fist of Gork and Brain Bursta. Again, just 2 very cheap spells. We also have his usual kit with Effigy to Git, Bonewood Staff, all the nice little buffs that he has. We have a Goblin Big Boss, just for some sniping potential. We have a Double Giant, which you can often see against monstrous factions. I think that the Viking will be a little bit surprised to not see a Mammoth in this case. He did bring Double Giant, which is gonna struggle maybe to find good targets against this Norscan build. He then has a front line of 4 Orc Biggins, not the Savage variant, which is much more common in the meta, but instead the regular variant. Then we have the Night Goblin RORs with Fanatics, and then a regular Goblin unit, as well as 2 Forest Goblin Spider Riders, and just a ton of cheap skirmish cav.
Yeah, so looking to be a pretty heavy skirmish game, at least in the early game. And then whatever remains for the Norscan side, we'll have to figure out a way to deal with these 2 giants. The Marauder Horsemen skirmishers can deal with them quite well, but given how many goblins are actually here, they likely won't have the opportunity to take out the giants. So I'm a little bit worried for the Norscan side. Maybe the Skinwolves can take care of giants? What are your thoughts?
I actually think the Skinwolves will do very well against giants, most likely. I'm not sure how the giants do in terms of AoEs with their splash attacks, if they can reliably kill multiple Skinwolf models per hit, or if it'll just be 1 Skinwolf model per hit, because I think that actually is what determines who will come out on top in that head-to-head. I also think that the Orc Biggins might struggle a little bit just to deal with all of these Marauder Berserkers, since they will have the support of Wulfric and Searing Doom in terms of spells. Brain Bursta is also nice, but it will have to be on point, I think, for the Greenskins to maintain any kind of infantry advantage. So I think I slightly favor the Norskins here, just in terms of builds, but it should come down mostly to execution.
Yeah, and if one side pulls ahead in the skirmisher advantage, that will actually be quite big. Since both sides want their skirmishers to be hitting priority targets. But we are expecting them to mostly trade out into each other. Some spells going onto the elite front lines for both sides. Berserkers getting Brain Bursted, Searing Doom on the big guns. Not too much damage either way, though.
Yeah, and we are just seeing chip damage across the board. The skirmishers for these two factions, not known for their killing power, more just known for battlefield control and being annoying. And we are seeing that here. They're chipping down the opposing units on either side, but not too much happening so far. Some nice brain bursters coming down and putting some chip damage onto the Marauder Berserkers as well. That'll be very important for trying to turn the front line into the Greenskin favor. And in fact, we are seeing a charge in from the Forest Goblin Spider Riders onto these Berserkers on the Norskin left flank, which is actually a really nice play. It's breaking the charge bonus.
Damage. And on the right flank too, a counter charge from the Norskin forces, but they actually charge into big guns. And quite a few Marauder horsemen are lost through there. A big Fanatic bomb in the center too. And suddenly it looks like the Norskin front line is just taking an absolute beating here.
Yeah, and Fists of Gork even going down onto the Orc Biggins to fight Armored Skinwolves and Marauder Berserkers, and it seems like it's actually doing a ton of work. Very cool use of a spell that you normally only see used for magic damage. But in this case, just using it for the underrated stat buffs. And with that, they're breaking through the front line very quickly. Now the Double Giant, fighting these Maws of Savagery now, and I think the Skinwolves might drag them down very quickly. So this could actually be what turns the game in the Norskin favor potentially. However, the Norskins will need to pull this game back because they are currently at a pretty decisive disadvantage.
Yeah, however, those Maws of Savagery are doing quite well. The Giants do hit back for quite a bit of damage, but Norska, even though a lot of their infantry front line has gone down, they are a lot less reliant on their infantry than other factions, just because of how independent the Skinwolves can be. But just looking at the current situation, it's looking like they're in a pretty rough spot, especially given the skirmisher advantage of the Greenskins now.
Ooh, and a really nice rear charge coming in from the Goblin Big Boss, going to be breaking off both of these Armored Skinwolves, and with that, I think that the game is pretty much entirely decided. I don't see any way for Legion to come back into this one, and in fact, he will hit army losses, so that was a very decisive and quick game. Just a really nice engagement from the Viking, and a really good use of Wurzag's Bonewood Staff and his buff abilities, just to get a bit more of an edge on the front line.
And somewhere along the way, we completely missed Wulfric getting absolutely annihilated. At some point, he just got completely taken out of the battlefield with only a few attacks to his name. Did you manage to catch that?
No, I actually have no idea. I have to imagine that he accidentally ran into some giants with Effigy to get. That's the only way I could really see him getting picked off that quickly. I suppose that does make sense, though. Wurzag, well known for his sniping potential because of Effigy to get. If you are able to get that down onto an enemy lord with a Goblin Big Boss debuff and then some big monsters, you can very, very quickly ruin your opponent's day. So,
okay, so there we go, and onto the ace match now.
I guess I'll go ahead and cover the counts.
Sounds
so,
good.
We will see Isabella von Karstein on a Hellsteed, actually. A little bit off meta, I think. Normally you will see a dragon or a Blood Dragon Vampire Lord, so pretty cool to see this. We have Double White King coming in with Scab's Wrath and nothing else. We have a front line of 5 zombies. It looks like triple Graveguard with Great Weapon, double Crypt Ghoul, and then a couple Direwolves with 2 Fellbats and 2 Vargeists, including the Devils of Schwarzschaffen. So after we say that you don't have a ton of off-meta builds that you can go with as the counts here, Viking comes in with this very off-meta build. So this will be exciting to see. What do the Empire have to fight it off?
Well, for the Empire, we are seeing the mighty War Wagons coming in with 3 of them. Sort of the Scourge Runner of the Empire. Fairly low DPS, but enough to keep cavalry away. And quite tanky too. They can actually survive well into the late game. A fairly meager cavalry force with only 2 Empire Knights, which does actually put actually I think it is, yeah, just 2 Empire Knights. A little bit scary when you have to face off against Blood Knights and other cavalry from the Vampire Counts, but still quite sturdy themselves, and they could still prove very useful here, cycle charging the infantry of the Counts. The usual mixed Empire infantry corps, just some spears, halberds, and their unbreakable units, even some great swords too, which will trade okay into the Graveguard, but I'm pretty sure it's about even, maybe slightly favored for the Graveguard. And as for the hero squad of the Empire, it will be a warrior priest with soulfire and a melee attack buff to really ensure that frontline wins out. Volkmar with the same kit along with banishment, and even even a Jade Wizard, just for a little bit of extra healing. That'll be going on the Empire Knights, Volkmar, and the heroes, most likely. It's a pretty interesting Empire build, I gotta say. Usually, like you said earlier, it is a lot of cavalry for the Empire, but in this case, both sides have sort of revoked that meta and have gone their own way. I think the Empire do have a pretty nice frontline advantage with Volkmar and the Warrior Priest, but with the flyers of the Vampire Counts, I'm a little bit worried the War Wagons might just get caught out.
Yeah, I do wonder if actually the Vargeist will focus on the War Wagons, which are quite tanky, or if they'll actually prioritize breaking through this Empire front line just to ensure an infantry advantage. Because while yes, the Counts do have some high quality infantry with their Crypt Ghouls and Graveguard, they will struggle to take down Volkmar with actually anything in this build. There's not really a ton that will fight Volkmar effectively. I guess Isabella is probably the best bet, but she isn't exactly known for her single entity killing power, so I'm a little bit concerned on that front for the Viking. But if he is able to take out Volkmar effectively, then I think he should have this game.
Yeah, and Volkmar, if he gets surrounded in cycle charge, that will usually be enough to take him out, so long as you have some decently high HP lords. The Vargeists too, with their recently buffed AoE damage, could prove quite useful. But we'll see if they actually die out. They can help win the frontline fight. They won't really be routing anything off, but they'll be giving a lot of leeway for the Graveguard great weapons to clear it out. And after that happens, the Empire don't have a lot of... they might not be able to kill the Graveguard fast enough. That's going to be the worry for the Counts. But I could see the front line for the Empire falling quite quickly too. The Flagellants, if they get Scabscraft, can get taken out almost entirely as the main engagement goes on. So let's see how that goes as the skirmish phase begins.
Yeah, and Viking doing a good job being patient, denying the best targets for these War Wagons. They are shooting into Graveguard, which not terrible, but not great. Not going to be getting a ton of value there. The War Wagons would much rather be shooting at the Vargeists, and now they're actually switching targets onto the White Kings, who will themselves also be quite tanky.
Yeah, and retreating a bit from the Vargeists, but not able to actually get counterfire on them, instead just shooting into the zombies. Doing decent damage, but not getting a whole ton of value. In general, the Counts will happily take damage on their zombies to allow them to advance. And here we go, slowly moving up. The two White Kings actually on mounts. We'll be able to get into position, Scabscraft fairly easily. And with the zombies getting closer now, we'll have to see how that goes. The Crypt Ghouls likely won't be able to get too much value unless they're able to dive in on spears, but they are also getting poked down by the war wagons. It looks like Legion is really focusing on winning that infantry fight instead of anything else, by the looks of it.
Yeah, and now a first Scabscraft comes down and ooh, wow, that is huge damage.
Yep.
Onto the Flagellants. Now the second one actually whiffs pretty much, misses the Sigmar Sons. A nice dodge from Legion, so that's quite nice for him. And actually an Earthblood going down on the Flagellants. I do kind of question actually the inclusion of a Jade Wizard in this particular build. There
Mhm.
aren't really any high value healing targets. I think that a Burning Head Mage would, for example, be a lot more effective at clearing out infantry. Uh, but I am curious to see how this Life Mage uses its spells over the course of the game.
Yeah, and we'll have to see. But initially, Isabella actually moving up and taking a lot of damage from the war wagons. Just the focus fire. They're surprisingly good at taking out single entities, and the life wizard does help keep the war wagons alive for sure. But I do feel too that he might not have a lot of good targets to heal. Even the healing on the flagellants pretty inefficient. A zombie summon looking like it goes down onto the war wagons, but that doesn't actually prevent them from firing by the looks of it, and they'll be able to continue to shoot at Isabella.
Yeah, although Isabella's staggering animation is actually protecting her from the majority of the damage there. Now, Volkmar actually kind of has used all of his buffs already, and so with that, the counts are free to get a surround on him without any real risk of being punished with a Soulfire, for example. And so Volkmar is in a little bit of trouble here, I think. He's caught up, surrounded entirely by Vargeist, and he should have enough mass to get out, but he's taking a ton of damage very, very quickly from the Vargeist, the Double White King, and from Isabella, and now actually a full surround and Master of Beguilement going down, and he's down to under half HP.
Yeah, but he is unbreakable. He will not be fleeing the battlefield, and that does allow the cavalry to come in and countercharge the Vargeist. Not to mention, Isabella has actually taken enough damage for her heal cap to show up. And even though Volkmar is low, as long as he doesn't get sniped out going into the later stages of the game, that will be an effective trade for the Empire. But we'll have to see. Volkmar is quite susceptible to getting sniped now. Isabella diving in on top of him, and some lucky hits would actually put the Empire in a very rough position.
Ooh, but the Empire Knights could get a really nice round onto Isabella here, and if Isabella goes down, then that should be enough for the Empire to get back into the lead in this game. This is a very sketchy situation for Isabella to find herself in, especially when I believe her Blood Chalice is on cooldown. However, we are seeing a big fight here. The Vargeist and the Fellbats all coming in, the Direwolves as well, getting a full surround onto the War Wagons and Volkmar. Isabella coming in as well, but a nice Soulfire bombardment coming down, going to be doing some decent damage, but maybe not as much as Legion was hoping for. We are seeing some Empire Knights coming back to peel the Vargeist off, and this is probably the decisive engagement in this game right now.
Yeah, if the Vargas do manage to escape, that will be very bad. They can consistently get surrounds on Volkmar and generally shut him down pretty quickly. As for the frontline fight, it does look to be holding out fairly evenly, so there's no pressure coming in from there, and it's just going to be these backline elements trying to fight each other and trying to pull out an advantage. It does look like Legion is actually deciding to retreat from the situation though, as it seems like things are going into the favor of, the Viking pulling out with his bats as Legion pulls ahead in the backline fight, but only just barely.
Yeah, this is still a very even game. The Counts just slowly but surely grinding, winning the front line. The Empire doing a great job of keeping the War Wagons online over the whole course of this game. However, they are compromised once more, getting surrounded by the Vargeist, and this time I don't believe there are many spells left for the Empire to use to pull back in this game. So an interesting Scab's Breath, actually. I think nuking a lot of the Fellbats, unfortunately, for the Viking.
Whiffing the great swords too.
The Scab's Breath's leaving a bit to be desired this game, and we will have to see if that comes back to bite Legion in this game. Now, Isabella going down onto the Warrior Priest. The Warrior Priest doing okay, and now Isabella actually at point-blank range for these War Wagons. They are going to be able to get some pretty good damage into her.
Yeah, and not to mention Volkmar getting a charge onto her too. And at this point, a lot of the mobility for the Counts is going down. This means that the War Wagons can probably begin kiting out, since the Vargulfs have actually taken a lot of damage, and as I say that, a huge volley comes down. It looks like the Vargeists are going to be exiting the battlefield very soon.
Oh man, and a big Soulfire bombardment also coming down from the Warrior Priest. Doing some good damage. and it looks like Isabella's going very low. The Vargeists are just about dead, and the Empire is struggling to take out all of this infantry, but Volkmar is a win condition. He has still about 2,000 HP once he reaches his healing cap, and it might be difficult for great swords to take him out. He can, of course, just cycle charge endlessly with his insane mass. The big thing might actually come down to single entities and their inability to cycle charge without multi-entities being engaged. So we'll have to see if Legion is able to save some multi-entities so that way Volkmar can cycle charge into the late game.
Yeah, the War Wagons don't really have a lot of ammunition, although they will be a multi-entity unit that can stay in combat, but they are taking a lot of damage, and there's also the big threat from the Vampire Counts, the White Kings, coming in. There's actually still 2 of them left, and they are very good at fighting in dueling situations. They can probably take out the Warrior Priest, no problem, and now we're seeing them hound down Volkmar, with the War Wagons not really able to peel the White Kings off. It's actually looking very bad for Volkmar now as he gets very low on HP. The War Wagons actually move in to body block against the White Kings, saving Volkmar, but sacrificing their own lives in the process. And without an easy way to kill off these White Kings, I think that's probably going to be the end of Legion's tournament run.
Yeah, it looks like it is the last stand of the many wagons, but they aren't able to quite snipe down Isabella. They focused very hard on her the entire game, but just not quite able to pull it off. And yeah, it looks like the Viking should be advancing 2-1 from this opening round. Very exciting series.
Yeah. The War Wagons were actually a pretty nice pick by the looks of it. They actually did a fairly good job sniping out single entities in the early game, but they just weren't really able to finish anything off.
Yeah, and honestly, 2 very off-meta armies, and I wonder if Viking had an inclination that Legion would go for this. You don't normally see Graveguard with great weapons being spammed here, and you definitely normally don't see a 0 Blood Knight build. But against Legion's army, which didn't have any demogryphs, it actually worked out very nicely. So maybe knowing your opponent once more. We saw that in the pick ban earlier, and maybe coming into play once more in this game.
Yeah, a nice pick for. Usually, when you see your opponent walk into a generally unfavored matchup, you can't expect them to have some off-meta builds, some different play styles that they might bring to the table. So going a bit off-meta yourself can prove quite useful. And in this case, it did actually pay off quite well. Even missing many of those Scab's Grass, you can see the White Kings still proving very useful. This is one of the main problems for Empire in this matchup. Just the Scab's Grass do so much damage. You can tell the Flagellant's just not getting a ton of value in, and really that pattern sort of extends itself to most of the Empire infantry here.
Yeah, the War Wagons, though, doing a great job. They got like 5,000 value between the 3 of them. Definitely the MVPs almost carried the day, but just not quite able to. I tend to desaturate my monitor just to avoid getting any kind of headache, so hopefully that isn't a problem for any of the players. But we'll have to see how they navigate this map because, yeah, I mean, it's relatively tight in a lot of places in terms of the competitive maps.
Yeah, it is still quite large though, and it does allow for a little bit of kiting potential. And strangely enough, there's no Vanguard positions, but with the map out of the way, let's get into some factions. I guess I'll start off with the Dark Elves, going over Ice Power's build in the revenge match against the Viking. He's brought with him 2 Scourge Runner Chariots, going for the more recent meta. A lot of Cold One Knights and 3rd unit of Scourge Runner Chariots. Maybe? No, he was just moving it around. Some Dark Riders too, and a fairly cheap front line. No Corsairs. This infantry would lose to a more elite Empire force, infantry force that is, and that's a little bit of a problem, but in general, Bleak Swords will do just fine. The Ice Power Classic coming in too, bringing in Marathi and a double Manticore. Generally, this is what you see getting bought a lot by Ice Power, since he is quite good at managing this squad of single entities and sniping out key targets. Slaanesh Harvesters 2, for their AoE, means that cavalry fights should be pretty easily won by Ice Power, as long as he's not taking too much ranged firepower. So with that out of the way, what do we have for the Empire?
So the Empire is coming in with a skirmish force with, it looks like, quad Outrider, so that's quite a bit to protect. We have double Knights of the Blazing Sun. We have Boris Toddbringer coming in, relatively cheap lord who doesn't need magic to babysit him. We have an Amethyst Wizard with Spirit Leech and the Fate of Buna. And then we have just a huge front line of, it looks like, 5 swordsmen and a single spearman. So pretty interesting build coming in here for the Empire. And I actually missed 1 Knights of the Blazing Sun, so it's actually 3 of them in total. He's going to be relying a lot on his Outriders for killing power, and we'll have to see if he's able to keep them online.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem here right now is probably the Scourge Runner chariots. Once they group up, they'll be able to push back the Outriders, but actually, a big focus fire play coming in from the Viking to snipe out the Scourge Runner chariots just brings all of his Outriders together to begin firing in on them, but Ice Power is actually dodging with his chariots and able to return fire, doing pretty good damage.
Yeah, and we can actually see the map coming into play here. 2 of the Outriders blocked from firing because of this weird skull. I have no idea what that is, but it certainly looks spooky. Now, Boris coming in for some free chip damage onto the Dread Spears, able to effectively dive in and dive back out. And then, actually, one of the Knights of the Blazing Sun overextending pretty badly here, and it will get caught and take a ton of damage before it's able to retreat, I think.
Yeah, there's
a bit of a
much
misplay.
the Viking can do here to save them, aside from just running. But no support can really peel for the double Manticores.
Ooh, yeah, and a Fate of Buna in the meantime going down onto the Slaanesh Harvesters. Because they rely so heavily on their physical resist, that will be a very cost-effective use of that spell. However, they should be able to heal a lot of it back up with a Soul Stealer in due time. And in fact, one does come down, and it will heal the Slaanesh Harvesters back up, but they are still quite tattered from that. The Soul Stealer hits a few Outriders, but not the most cost-effective Soul Stealer. Another Soul Stealer going down into the Knights of the Blazing Sun and some Swordsmen, but not before the Slaanesh Harvesters actually get taken out.
Yeah, a big cavalry loss coming in from Ice Power, but he does trade back, killing off one of the Knights of the Blazing Sun. The other one at half HP means that he does actually have a pretty nice cavalry advantage. His skirmishers from the Scourge Runner chariots are doing good, and he actually catches out a few units of Outriders. This is actually quite huge here, since there's not a lot of range for the Viking.
Yeah, very effective use of these Dark Riders and Scourge Runners, just compromising the high-value Empire skirmishing forces. Now, they are managing to get back online, and they will start firing back in onto Marathi, and a Spirit Leech on the Marathi as well. This could be a huge snipe attempt as Marathi goes down under half HP and is taking a ton of damage, and another big hit from Boris. Oh my god, she's terrified at under 1000 HP now, and this could be the play that turns the game in the Empire favor.
Yeah, actually, extremely nice hits from Boris. 3 in a row. But he does have to worry about Scourge Runner chariots and the cavalry now, the Manticore, but he takes off into the air. Safely does manage to escape. In the distance, we're seeing the front lines engage onto each other. That won't really play much of a big part until we hit later into the game. And now we're seeing
comes back.
Things are stabilizing a bit for the Empire, but they still don't have a lot of cavalry, which means that the Dark Riders will be able to effectively chase down the Outriders without too much of a problem. Marathi, though, with Boris diving in straight onto her, will she actually be able to pull out in time?
Oh, she needs to pull out. Oh, she gets nailed.
Oh, boy.
And with that, she's going to rout again. And if Boris just gets one more hit, ooh, not quite. But still, Marathi at only 300 HP, and she actually missed a lot of her Soul Stealer heal because of that. And Boris Todbringer using Foe Seeker to bring his speed up over Marathi's, chasing her down, but misses the hit on the routing Marathi. That would have been huge. In the meantime, though, the Dark Elves are managing to collapse all of the Empire mobility, and they're getting into the cookie jar of these Outriders now, shutting them down. And they are grinding through all of the Empire chaff as well, and I'm worried for the Empire that they won't be able to actually deal with all of this Dark Elf infantry. While Marathi comes back once again at the very edge of the map, and Boris might struggle to chase her off at this point with 15 less speed.
Yeah, that's actually very huge that Marathi is back. It's a mass rout for the Empire on the front line. Like said earlier, the Bleak Swords and the Dread Spears are enough to cut down Empire chaff. And heading on into the late game, they finally break through, meaning that the Empire, they don't really have many forces left in general, just a couple Outrider units. But Boris doesn't really have an answer for these two Manticores. If he was able to pick favorable engagements against them, he should be able to win it out. But given that he has to eventually engage the infantry, it means he's going to be the one taking charges from the Manticores.
Yeah, and Marathi comes back, gets another Soul Stealer, and is up to 800 HP once more. So she is actually not likely to be killed anytime soon. And yeah, with that, I think that this game is probably out of reach for the Empire at this point. And I do wonder, even if Marathi had run off the map, I think the Dark Elves still would be in a commanding position, just able to overwhelm the Empire mobility and their front line very effectively in order to get a big advantage in the main fight.
Yeah, the Viking really did need those Knights of the Blazing Sun to secure the frontline engagement, but just the trades during the early and mid game really did bring out that advantage for Ice Power. And it's looking like he's going to pull out a win with the glorious Dark Elf first pick in this best of 3. But there's still a little bit of skirmishing going on. Marathi will be getting targeted down by some of these Outriders. He may go down, but unless Boris gets some really lucky hits on these Manticores, it will likely be a fairly straightforward win. Even dodging with Marathi to make sure she doesn't take any damage will be really securing the victory for Ice Power.
Yep, crossing his T's, dotting his I's, and not leaving anything to chance. Very nice play here. And I do wonder if Viking might be regretting his pick of the Empire here. But, well, we'll have to see. I'm assuming he'll probably bring in greenskins for his first pick once more. A faction maybe he feels a little more comfortable with, and we'll see if he's able to tie this series up, as one of the Manticores, actually Boris, is giving it his all, routing off both Manticores 2v1 somehow. Man, if Marathi dies to these Outriders and Boris manages to kill both Manticores, I suppose there's theoretically a hope of terror routing the rest of the forces off, but that would be very, very shocking to me.
Yeah, although definitely still possible.
Ooh, Marathi might shatter. Marathi shatters.
And
okay.
There we go. Okay, so now comes a dicey situation for the Dark Elves. Marathi is not off the map yet, so their massive leadership debuff won't be dropping. There's just a handful of infantry, which does allow Boris to actually terror route, but the main problem being the infantry is actually at fairly high HP. It'll make them a lot more resistant to terror routing, and you can see these Dread Spears actually at full leadership, despite actually reaching the late game. And the fact that one of the Manticores is actually coming back too could be a huge part in actually winning against Boris. A single charge and 2 lucky hits is really all Ice Power needs to win it. So we'll have to see how this plays out. There is a lot of infantry left for Ice Power though.
Yeah, Dark Elf infantry is very susceptible to terror routing, but in this case, I don't think there's really much to actually debuff their leadership aside from Boris himself. And without rear charges being a possibility, I think Boris will struggle. The Outriders getting chased down across the map, and we're actually seeing this cat and mouse game, and they will eventually be caught by the Scourge Runners here. And with that, the Viking will be forced to stay engaged with Boris once he charges in. So I don't think Boris will be able to do it, especially because the Manticore, in theory, could probably hover around and wait for Boris to charge in. But we'll have to see. It's definitely a little bit dicier for the Dark Elves than we thought at first, but I still think they should be able to close out this game quite effectively.
Yeah, there's still a unit of Cold One Knights that can get a decent charge on Boris, getting in probably at least a few hundred points of damage. He has heal capped, and there is an interesting situation where once these Outriders are actually chased off, Boris is going to be getting a leadership debuff until he lands. It won't play a huge part, but it will still be a little bit uncomfortable for the Viking. The Outriders now getting chased off, and like you said, Dactor, there's only one source of leadership debuff that will be coming in, and that's only Boris. No charge in the back penalties, no getting shot at. So we'll see how well these Dread Spears actually do. They're going to brace up against Boris to make sure that he can't land a charge. And surprisingly enough, Morathi hasn't actually routed off the map yet. She's actually continuing to fly away, just getting corralled, and yeah, until she leaves the map, the Dark Elves won't be getting their leadership debuff. Boris actually deciding to chase her, although she is shattered. But we'll see how this plays out. The Outriders are finally gone. Boris can't really bother chasing Morathi anyways, since he's going to be taking leadership debuffs himself, and Ice Power is going to be taking that time to regroup with his forces.
Yeah, now Viking saying in chat that, yeah, Ice Power refusing to leave the map. Also a 0 damage Spirit Leech apparently. Now Morathi is finally going to leave the map. And you can see the leadership dropping quite dramatically. And actually, this might be ideal for the Viking, because this is lining up with his timing that he'll charge in quite effectively. Now Boris does need to land here because he's actually taking that leadership debuff. And it will add up over time on the balance of power, if nothing else. So we see him coming in onto the Dread Spears, and the first Dread Spear does Terror out, which could lead to some kind of cascading effect. But you can see strength in numbers here. It looks like the Dark Elves are most likely going to be okay, as actually the Scourge Runners Terror out.
Yeah, pretty good initial routing actually for the Viking, but as long as at least 2 of these Dread Spear units hold, Ice Power should be okay.
And also Ice Power very smartly keeping about half his army in reserve, just so that way if there is a big terror route, he's still okay. And of course the units that terror out will come back quite quickly. They won't be routed off the map or anything. So this is going to be very, very difficult for Boris to have any chance of winning, and I don't think it's going to happen.
Yep, the Cold One Knights coming in to charge in onto Boris. They do get routed off too, or actually go into cycle charge, but that's enough damage to get a rout on Boris. It's going to be a win for Ice Power.
Yep, going up 1-0 with his very effective Dark Elf first pick. He's been having a lot of success with that on this patch. Maybe questioning their spot in the meta a little bit.
Yeah, and wow, bringing in those Scourge Runners, they proved as effective as the War Wagons, bringing in 3,000 damage value, taking out about a quarter of the Vikings' army, all on their own. The Outriders did do okay, but they did actually get shut down a couple times that game. And the poor Knights of the Blazing Sun, look at that. Their combined value, not even making up for a single Knight of the Blazing Sun, or just barely so, was probably the roughest part for that game for the Viking. So with that out of the way, we are moving on to the second game against Ice Power and the Viking. Or Ice Power.
Oh my god.
It's going to be a Vampire Counts build. Pretty typical. 2 Blood Knights, a Black Coach, Zombie, Skeleton, Frontline, a little bit of Graveguard just to push through, and Banshees, Mortis Engine, and a Blood Dragon, Vampire Lord on foot. A little bit off meta, but he does have a lot of debuffs. It should be good. This is a nice anti-blob tech. It's a pretty simple Vampire Counts build, but I heard some surprise coming from you, Dactor, for this greenskin build.
Yeah, I I did say the Rogue Idol could be used here. So, just to start from the top, we do have Azag the Slaughter with Spirit Leech and all of his AoE buffs. We have the Black Orc Big Boss, also with his AoE buff and his AoE ITP aura. We have the ROR Night Goblin Fanatics, pretty much an obligatory pick for any matchup for the Greenskins. We have a box of 4 regular Orc Biggins and 1 Savage Orc Biggin. We have a Rogue Idol, which very excited to see. We have a Giant, and we have a unit of River Trolls. So this is literally just an all-in AoE debuff blob. That is all there is to it. There is just a bunch of debuffs in an AoE, and that's the whole build. Pretty glorious.
Yeah, with a lot of single entities too. This will be a little bit harder to tear apart than your other boxes, especially because of Azag, but cycle charges from the Black Knights could still come into play. The Orc Big Guns do not have charge defense against large. I don't think there's any of that for this greenskin build. And the Blood Knights with their cycle charging could prove pretty scary as long as they don't get locked down in any situation. That'll probably be what this game comes down to. And it should be exciting. The Black Coach too can be quite scary here too. If microed correctly, you can dive into the sides of these formations still and pull out before the single entities actually tear it apart. So we'll see how this goes. How do you feel about the odds for both players here?
I think Ice Power is advantaged just because he actually did take a Mortis engine, which has kind of fallen out of the meta here a little bit. But it's a pretty good pick all the same, specifically to counter boxes like this. You can see only the Giant and really only the Giant, because the Rogue Idol's animations mean it's unlikely to hit the Mortis engine very effectively. So the Giant will need to carry, and also the double Banshee is actually quite strong because the only magic damage in this entire army is Spirit Leeching from Azag, not nearly as effective against Banshees as Fists of Gork would be.
Yeah, it uses up a lot of Winds of Magic. It gets countered by healing, and it means you can't really do much else with your magic. It kills them extremely slowly, but that's going to be the priority target here. He has no other spells, so we'll see how that plays out. The box is actually moving forwards. It looks like it might get a nice early engagement onto some zombies before Dactor has fully positioned into an optimal place. But
yeah,
we'll see how that goes.
I will also say I am concerned for this greenskin build because the whole point of the defensive box sort of playstyle in this matchup is the amount of control tools that the greenskins have, and this build actually doesn't have any control tools at all. There are no Mithers, there are no smoke bombs, there is nothing to really punish cycle charging. So in theory, the counts should just be able to run in and out at will over and over until this entire build is dead. But we will see a nice hit immediately onto the Mortis engine from the Giant, but now the Giant extending quite far. It looks like it might get back in to the blob, no problems. So no harm, no foul there. But we will see. Now in just a straight grind, of course, the Greenskins will do quite well because their infantry is quite a bit stronger. But I imagine we will start seeing some serious cycle charging coming in from the counts any minute here. And actually a really nice Fanatics cast. Wow.
Yeah. Thankfully for Ice Power at the very least, missing most of the Stearnsmen, but a nice clear out of the zombies. Not an expensive unit, but the zombies buy time for the vampire cast. And by killing off the zombies, you reduce the number of cycle charges that can come in. Rogue Idol actually slamming into the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord. But with the buffs and the healing, I think the single entities here will be a bit too much for the Greenskins to handle, at least for now.
Yeah, and
coming in too, and may get surrounded.
Possibly, but without any Mithers, it looks like it'll just be able to escape no problem. And one problem here actually is that this build is very reliant on debuffs, but none of the debuffs are in play for this big engagement on this flank. They're all just barely out of range, so Viking needs to correct that immediately if he wants to have an optimal engagement here.
Yeah, and while the single entities fight out the heroes of the vampire counts, the Mortis engine is able to stay in combat mostly unperturbed, and you can see that's already done a good amount of damage to these savage orcs. Mortis engine pulling away, still at high HP, and the greenskins don't have any healing, which is part of their faction. But just looking at the HP of their single entities, things are already looking pretty bad right now. Some good strategic play too from Ice Power, leaving his troops in reserve to make sure that he can continue to cycle charge and he won't be losing too many of these guys. Going into the laking where they will be much more useful. And the single entity fight too going quite in the favor for the counts now. The giant is trying to escape, but it looks like he's actually getting stopped up by the rogue idol itself. Only just now able to push his way through. But that's a lot of damage on the single entities for the greenskins.
Yeah, definitely. And the Mortis still very healthy, already up to nearly 2 chevrons of damage. I mean, it is just getting so much value, draining all of these high value greenskin targets, pretty much draining the entire build every single time that it goes in. And the greenskins unable to punish it effectively thus far. We'll have to see if they're able to get in more effectively, but they need to shut it down. I think the next time it goes in, if it's allowed to sit in there for too much longer, then I think it will be enough for the counts to win this game.
Yeah, not to mention too, the double Banshee is are still extremely healthy. Azag hasn't had enough opportunities to really Spirit Leech them down, and because of that, there's not a lot of tools to actually kill them.
Oh my god, the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord getting hit by everything.
Was a single hit from the Rogue Idol. For those of you that are unaware, it does get a huge damage buff when it gets down to low HP. Taking a look at it right now, it can do 1,000 damage with a single hit. And Burst Infantry, it is specialized to do that, actually causing the Dragon Lord to retreat immediately. This could be the swing play that the Viking is looking for. Rogue Idol actually getting in a lot of damage now. And it's important that it actually gets finished off and not left at low HP.
Definitely very important. Now, you can see also the Viking has been Spirit Leeching the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord over the course of this entire game, rather than either of the Banshees. The Banshees are, of course, very healthy because of that, but if he's able to take out the Count's sorts of leadership and magic, it will be well worth it. However, this Blood Dragon Vampire Lord now is... it's sitting in the back on 1200 HP, and there really isn't much to punish it, and I can't imagine Ice Power will allow it to be caught out again.
Yeah, now sending in the Banshees by the looks of it to snipe with the Rogue Idol. This is about the best option for him to do. Since they are ethereal, they won't be taking nearly as much damage from the Rogue Idol, I think only 25%. And as soon as these Orc Big Guns are gone, that will be a pretty clear path to victory for Ice Power, but new leadership buffs are coming down. The Big Guns actually do manage to hold and are brought all the way up to almost full leadership. Could actually be really big here since Ice Power is sort of running out of infantry.
Yeah, and now Spirit Leech is starting to go down onto the Banshees, and man, the Rogue Idol just does such a ridiculous amount of damage at this point, 1140, that it will do pretty good burst damage even through the ethereal status of the Banshees. You can see it hits for about 300 damage there. Not bad at all. However, its leadership is very low, and if it routes off, that is a huge part of this greenskin killing power that will be leaving the battlefield.
Yeah, nevertheless, a single Banshee does get picked off, just thanks to the Azag and the Black Orc Big Boss. And very importantly, now we're seeing there's no more infantry for Ice Power. I think the Viking might have actually pulled it through with the Rogue Idol, and the leadership debuffs of Azag actually pulling through here. Azag.
I want to see this Blood Dragon Vampire Lord get one shot by this Rogue Idol at 1000 HP. I want to see it. And the belly flop! Oh!
And that's the end of the Blood Dragon Vampire Lord.
Oh my
Absolutely
goodness.
brutal.
that was amazing.
Yep, just stomped into the ground. I think this may be the remains of his body, but you can barely find it at this point. And actually, a really interesting tech pick. The Rogue Idol performs much better in at low HP, and with Azag's buffs, it actually managed to stay in without routing off. Uh, that's that's actually a pretty crazy tech pick. Look at that, 4,000 damage value. What do you think about that, Doctor?
I just, man, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen in this game. That
Yep.
that final belly flop, of all the animations, man, of all the animations, absolutely glorious. Someone, what is it? Someone clip that.
Yeah, that was
That's beautiful.
glorious. Oh my gosh. Oh, because usually you would have expected the Rogue Idol to have routed off at that point. It was at extremely low HP. Uh, but there we go. And so, strangely enough, I think it's chevrons that it gained actually gave it the leadership buff it needed to not route during one point in the late game. And from there, that's essentially all the Viking needed. I was looking rough until that Blood Dragon Vampire Lord just got absolutely demolished.
Yeah, I mean, man, I did not
There we
think
go.
about the Rogue Idol's passive like that, but that actually is really strong if you're able to keep it in there. Man, that is really cool.
Yeah,
Really
and
cool stuff.
yeah, there we go. Things could have gone differently, of course, if he had the Lord flying in the air with cycle charging. But that would have been a completely different build otherwise. Just a very surprising game in general. These 5 peasant archers will be the mainline DPS, and to protect them, he's brought with himself some pretty elite cavalry, some Grail Knights and the Arawar Questing Knights, along with the slightly less elite Knights of the Realm, just enough to defeat the typical vampire count's cavalry force. Pretty wide front line too, many men-at-arms, some spears, and even some zombies, just to hold up the front a tiny bit longer. Enchantress and Double Paladin too, to fight single entities and to mortise down the infantry. Pretty standard when it comes down to Bretonia. It's just really all about those peasant archers. So with that out of the way, what do we have for the counts?
So for the vampire counts, we actually have Manfred von Karstein on it. Looks like a barded warhorse, I believe, with 66 speed. He has Spirit Leech, Invocation, and Raise Dead, as well as his Winds of Magic generating abilities. So he'll be, I'm guessing, Spirit Leeching the Arwar Questing Knights. Pretty cool pick there. We then have Triple Blood Knight, the Mortis Engine, a Corpse Cart with Unholy Lodestone for sucking out some magic from those peasants. We have Double White King with Scav's Wrath, pretty typical, just to shut down peasant bowmen. We have a front line of 5 zombies, and then 5 skeleton warriors and spearmen in the back, mixed. It looks like 2 warriors and 3 spearmen. So pretty standard build, all things considered. I'd say the only unexpected part of it is Manfred, but he makes a lot of sense, so I'm not too surprised to see him.
They're pretty typical from both sides. Now, for the armies actually clashing into each other, I would rate the cavalry. I would put them about even with each other. If peasant archer fire does come in, my money would go for the Bretonians, since both sides do indeed have healing. And I guess probably the front line of the Bretonians is going to be their weakest point. There's a lot of skeletons here that will cut apart the men-at-arms, and while the cavalry's all distracted, that will allow the front line of the counts to overrun the archers. We'll see if that theory holds up though as the game begins. Of course, we'll have to keep an eye on those Scab's Grass, as they are actually very huge swing plays in most matchups. And of course, cycle charging into infantry will be big. Ice power a little bit slow to the draw, lets his peasant mobs get charged, but not without returning fire with his archers.
And in fact, the archers look like they shoot more peasant mob than Blood Knights on the initial volley, but they will correct that with this second volley, and I have to say, the flaming arrows looking very thematic on this snow map today. Now the Fae diving way in there with the double paladin, and she gets surrounded.
Yeah, that's
She
bad.
might die. This would be really bad.
Ooh, half HP already.
Ooh, Blood Chalice coming down.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, Blood Chalice should knock everything out. Blood Chalice should knock everything out and allow her to escape. Unless it gets canceled. I think it got canceled. Oh my god, she's down. She is routing. That Blood Chalice is not coming.
Oh my goodness. And the Fey Enchantress.
Oh, and it does come
down.
somehow.
But Fey Enchantress is down. That is the wind up on that was crazy.
It kills 2 Blood Knights though. It does kill 2 Blood Knights. She drags them to the grave with her. And man, the counts need to pull them down back and start getting some serious AoE invocations here.
Yeah.
Man, that's still a good play for the counts, but it actually came at quite the cost.
Yeah, and of course cavalry in the late game is so important. And without Blood Knights, the vampire counts would likely die, but the fact that they're getting healed up means that this is likely going to be a very strong lead coming in from the Viking.
Oh, this is really cool. He's using the Mortis engine and the Corpse Cart to regen the Blood Knights passively.
Yeah, and one major point about losing the Fey Enchantress is that the front line of the Bretonians is going to be collapsing a lot quicker now. But another big play coming down. Another cavalry surround onto single entities with the Paladins going in for Manfred and the White Kings. We'll see how that engagement goes. There's a lot of healing, and it's not nearly as damaging as a full surround by Blood Knights.
Yeah, now Manfred having so much Winds of Magic is so huge here. He is able to Spirit Leech these Companions of Canal and still get down some more AoE invocations in the heck. Another one coming in, and man, this is so brutal that the Fae got taken out so quickly. And indeed, it looks like the Bretonians are starting to break across the entire front line. The Blood Knights are relatively healthy, and although the Peasant Archers are still firing in unperturbed, I don't think they can do enough damage to offset the massive casualties that Bretonnia has already taken.
Yeah, the only hope was that those Blood Knights got completely killed off, but they still have a lot of healing before they hit their healing cap. They will be able to continue fighting well into the late game as long as there's no major misplay. And we're seeing now the front line of the Bretonians, a huge break, and the tap out from Ice Power, just a very unfortunate, just a single unfortunate misplay really closing out that game. Oh my gosh. What a pick. Oof. Oh man. I have a theory that I think that was just a misplay. I don't think he was trying to set up the Chalice of Potions.
No, he definitely wasn't. It was a desperation move at the end there to try and get back some value and to try and knock the Blood Knights out of the way, but
that was that was definitely very, very brutal. Surely Ice Power kicking himself now, but
yeah, very much so.
Yeah, the build was still fairly good. It could have gone either way. The Peasant Archers, actually, if you look at their damage values, they were protected long enough to get in quite a bit of damage. The Cavalry would have gone to trade out, but yeah, there we go. So yeah, now I guess we're just moving on to the finals now, unless the other semi-final game is going underway. So Dactor, how about we jump into that now?
Sure. I suppose I'll cover the greenskins. So we will see Skarsnik with a Night Goblin Shaman with Vindictive Glare. I believe that's Fists of Gork. And let's see here. He's moving him around a bit. And Itchy Nuisance. Interestingly, no Gork will fix it, which I would think would be the more common pick here. We will then also see a Goblin Big Boss, just for the sniping. We have a front line with a couple of Black Orcs, some Savage Orc Biggins, and some Goblins, with the Arwar Night Goblin Fanatics. We have triple Forest Goblin Spider Rider Archer, double Stone Troll, a unit of Nasty Skulkers, and it looks like that about rounds it out. So interestingly enough, no immune to psychology, but I suppose There is actually terror on the Bretonian side if you'd like to cover them.
For the Bretonians, it is indeed King Lewin himself. One of the matchups where he is basically as viable as the Fey Enchantress to cycle charge targets and to provide terror against the trolls. Going to be seeing a good amount of knights, some Grail Knights, questing knights on one flank, more Grail Knights, more questing knights on the other. Strangely enough though, an uncommon pick, 2 mounted yeomen, very low AP, very cheap though, and they can chase off greenskin units for a very low price. Frontline, going extremely budget, just 3 peasant mobs and 2 spearmen at arms, only a slightly higher spend than the classic 5 peasant mob frontline, and not too many archers, only 3 peasant bowmen, and that looks like it, which I think is in the favor of Zero here, since there's no Arachnarok spiders to snipe out. He really just needs to focus on the stone trolls. So there we go, the battle has gone underway. The greenskins leading with a skirmisher advantage, but it's a minor one, and it's going to come down to how this frontline fight actually goes down. There's a lot of black orcs for the Bretonians to deal with, and what do you think their solution to that is?
Well, I suppose it'll just have to be Peasant Bowman Fire and Cycle Charging. Peasant Bowmen actually do okay damage into pretty much this entire greenskin front line just because it's all unshielded. I'm sure they'll rather focus the Savage Orc Biggins first, but once they're taken care of, the Black Orcs can fall to mass Bowman Fire as well, despite their armor, just because of that lack of shielding.
Yeah, but it will still have to come down to a lot of cycle charging. The Bretonian front line will definitely fall extremely quickly, and I'm already a little bit concerned for the Bretonians here. Their front line will fall apart quite quickly, and from there's not many opportunities to cycle charge.
Yeah, now I do think if they're able to get some picks onto the Stone Trolls, that will be the way into this game for them. Now that I think about it, interestingly enough, very interestingly, none of these Peasant Bowmen are the poison variant, so there is actually no poison in this Bretonian force.
Yeah, a little bit of a strange pick. Usually you do want the poison effect, since it is so useful against it, just because of its damage debuff. It's a 20% swing for a fairly cheap cost, but going into the mainline engagement, Lewin getting some nice hits on the Goblin Big Boss. He is in the thick of combat, throwing down his debuffs, and this is where the play is going to be made. Lots of cavalry moving in, and if we see a mass rout from the greenskins, that will be the Bretonian lead that Zero is looking for.
Yeah, now some Black Orcs being held in reserve here, they probably want to get into the fight quickly. You do definitely want them to support the Stone Trolls, but some really nice AoE buffs going down from Skarsnik. Get back here, keeping the Stone Trolls leadership up, and they are really cutting through these Grail Knights, who are afflicted with Itchy Nuisance, really lowering their damage output quite severely. Now the Stone Trolls are getting focused down by archers, and despite their missile resist, they are going down rather quickly, and one Stone Troll will rout here. However, the entire front line of the Bretonians is starting to break. Now, in the meantime, some Black Orcs getting caught in the back by Grail Knights, and the nasty Skulkers going over, and if they're able to get a smoke bomb down onto the Grail Knights, that could be quite huge. However, it looks like the Grail Knights will just barely manage to escape, and that's actually a very nice trade for the Bretonians.
Yeah, some of the Stone Trolls do get routed off too in the middle. The game could still go either way, just thanks to that Peasant Bowman Fire, but there's not a lot to actually chase them off, which will be huge going into the later stages of this game. The Bretonian front line is beginning to collapse too, and that's 2 very expensive knight units getting finished off. The Questing Knights and the Grail Knights basically at death's door here, and even Lewin coming into support is actually going to be a little bit of a risky play. He may get picked off here.
Yeah, now, the Bretonians running low on cavalry, but they do have most of their archers still online, but just now they're finally getting compromised. Savage Orc Biggins and Night Goblin Fanatic ROR getting into the backline, compromising the archers. And that might be the play that Zero needs to take a decisive lead in this game. Now, some Knights coming in, charging into the Blackworks, but they will be taking some serious damage, and I'm not sure if I've actually seen Skarsnik use a Rampage yet. It's very possible that he has, and I just missed it. But if he's able to get a big Rampage onto these remaining questing Knights, that could be enough to seal this game.
Yeah, and here we go. A big charge coming down onto Lewin. It looks like it will be causing some good leadership debuffs onto the goblins, but the stone trolls are still holding really well, and especially scary is a full HP unit of nasty skulkers. They will likely be able to pull apart the knights, especially now that they're getting surrounded.
Yeah, actually, the Nasty Skulker is doing some pretty good work here, smoke bombing Lewin, and now a fermented fungi comes down, making sure that those Grail Knights are not going to be escaping any time today. And with that, I think that Zero has taken a decisive lead in this game. Now, the Peasant Bowmen are starting to get back online. However, their damage output isn't that good. And so Lewin is going to kind of have to hard carry this game by himself. And I'm just not sure if he's going to be able to do that against all of these Black Orcs and Stone Trolls and the control tools that the Greenskins have remaining.
Yeah, really, he needs to find a Hail Mary play to take control. Either a really nice snipe on Skarsnik, or getting a ton of archer fire onto the trolls to get them to rout. But that's going to be very difficult. Skarsnik in a fairly defended position at high HP would be very risky actually diving in on him. But that's essentially what needs to happen. The stone trolls splitting up too does give an opportunity to pick them off, but there's basically no more cavalry left on the Bretonnian side. Lewin flying around, trying to chase off some skirmishers. But that probably won't be enough. They're able to outpace him. He thinks twice of it and goes into the Black Orcs now. Will buy a bit of time for the archers, so let's see how this plays out. Paladin getting surrounded.
Yeah, he's going down pretty quickly. And I will say also, a very nice use of magic on the Greenskin side of this game. Going for the Itchy Nuisance. Not a spell you see that often, but it seems like it's working out really nicely. And I will say also, Vindictive Glare could have been really nice onto Lewin, but he hasn't really used it this game. I'm guessing it was more for the Fey Enchantress. An interesting tech pick. And it's a good job by Zero recognizing that maybe Vindictive Glare won't do as much to Lewin thanks to his Lion's Shield being popped at the right time, if he sees it, and instead opting to go more for the AoE debuffs.
Yeah, and it seems like even without the slows, Zero is still able to win out that cavalry fight using the what was the other debuff spell that he actually brought here?
Let's see.
Yeah, but
I'm not sure if he brought another one.
Oh, really? Let's see. Let's take a quick look while this game finishes out. Yeah, the Itchy Nuisance.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I thought okay.
Actually, just helping in the grindy fights, the long-term fights, and it doesn't actually give you a mobility advantage, but it gives you a pretty huge combat advantage, and that was quite useful, actually killing off the knights and preventing their damage. And from here, it's just cleaning up. Those Black Orcs managed to hold for a very long time, and the archers just really weren't enough to kill off the stone trolls. The combinations of the skirmishers too made sure that the stone trolls would come back, prevented them from getting chased off, and now it's Lewin once again getting caught in the blob. We'll see if he's able to pull out a miracle. He terror routes here, but sadly looks like that might not be the case. Trying to escape as best as he can and leaving the damsel of life for dead, although she does manage to just barely escape too.
Yeah, and I don't think we've sent a fungi onto Lewin yet, so once he gets down below the 80% HP threshold, that will be a very impactful ability and probably will be the death knell for the Bretonnians in this game, as we see the balance of power pretty heavily in favor of the Greenskins. I would think that fungi should be off cooldown quite soon, maybe making sure that Lewin hits that 80% threshold before he uses it would be a very smart play.
Yeah, Lewin, or HP thresholds in general, he is very close to being hit, but if you use it too early, you lose almost the entire cast of it. Of course, there's still the melee defense debuff, but you want to make sure that you get the full value off the fungi. It looks like that might not even be needed, as Lewin gets completely surrounded by trolls and spiders, and that's likely going to be it. Fungi coming down, he gets rampaged, a huge melee defense debuff, and his leadership should be dropping to 0 in just a second.
Yep, and with that, I'm sure the Bretonians will probably hit army losses. And it looks like we have our second finalist. It's going to be Zero, who will be facing off against the Viking. Should be pretty exciting, to be sure.
Yeah, now Zero and the Viking. If we look at the Hall of Fame on my Discord, Zero has actually qualified and won the first ranked league champions before. A very competent player, could prove quite a challenge for the Viking, who has also shown themselves a lot in these tournaments. So I expect it to be a pretty exciting match. Both players are quite strong. So we'll see how it plays out. As soon as this game ends, Lewin has been clinging on to the ropes for a while now, but that constant poison effect is very powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And even if he manages to get into the air, he's not going to be able to do much. So recognizing it's a lost cause, the platypus will go ahead and pull out of the game.
So there we go.
GG.
Yeah, that's the ace match for the last semi-final for today. Stone Trolls doing really well. And really the Greenskin forces in general, all of their units generally performing well, doing their jobs, and pulling out the victory. As for the Bretonians, the cavalry generally got shut down before they could pull out their value, and despite the fact that the archers could fire away fairly freely at the beginning of the game, they weren't really able to assist many of the other units.
Along with his usual AoE damage spells that are bound to him, we then see the Thunderous One, Ancient Stegodon, a Bastiladon with Solar Engine, so very, very, very heavy on the single entity monster play. We then see some skink cohorts with javelins, some regular skink cohorts. It looks like triple Saurus Warrior, double Chameleon Skink, and double Pterodon Riders, as well as Zero's favorite, a single Skink Chief on foot. So, how about the Greenskins? What do they have to counter this very top-heavy and relatively blobby Lizardmen build?
Well, we are seeing double giant coming in from the Viking. A pretty common trend, I think, that we've seen over the tournaments. A nice long line of goblins, just normal goblin units to hold down. They trade okay against skinks, and they're generally a really nice roadblock. The orc archer boys that you mentioned earlier to shoot at the single entities. Lots of skirmishers too. Some boar boys and orc big guns also to kill off the single entities. So I think we've seen a similar build like this before. It wants to take a straight up fight against the lizardmen and focus fire down in that main engagement with many of their support units. It generally goes quite well since the lizardmen don't have nearly as many support units and are mostly relying on their single entities to carry out things by themselves. The chameleon skinks don't have as much range, and they might have a hard time actually firing in on the giants. It should be pretty good. Do you have any thoughts on the matchup? There are two Pterodon riders that could be quite impactful.
I think that the biggest thing, or the biggest things, are that the lizardmen want to protect their chameleon skinks so that way they can get their damage and poison in onto the giants over the course of the game. And they also really want to shut down the orc arrow boys as much as possible. So it'll be an interesting balance to see where Mazdamundi uses his AoE spells. Will he use them to nuke the orc arrow boys, which I'd kind of more expect, or will he use them to try and pick off the orc boar boys in order to keep his chameleon skinks alive longer? Now, a vindictive glare going down, and it's actually dodged by the Pterodon riders. That's pretty impressive, because that is a very difficult spell to dodge.
Yeah, strangely enough, though, it does manage to hit Mazdamundi just because of the Arc of Fire, but a lot of damage being reduced thanks to that strong micro coming in from 0 to start off the game. The Skink Chief moving in too, trying to find his pick on the Giants, but instead just shooting some darts into the Goblins. Actually,
Yeah, and
pretty
he is
inefficient.
so cheap that, I mean, he will never run out of ammo. If he runs out of ammo, then this game will be about 20 minutes long, so not really a problem for him to use his ammunition, picking off a couple of Goblin models. And really, the most important thing here is that Zero not overextend with the Thunderous one, as it moves in pretty far, especially against Wurzag with a net ability. Effigy of the Git could come down right here.
And it looks
Oh
like
man,
that's
it
going
is
to be the
really
goal.
getting some rough animations, and it needs to get out right now because Wurzag is coming.
Yeah, the Giants are moving in too. The Boar Cavalry with their high AP values are moving in, but Mazdamundi, staying along the sides, he might want to throw in some AoEs here, and that would actually be really punishing for the Greenskins. But
Now I'm really surprised, and there we go. Finally, Effigy of the Git coming down. Now Mazdamundi coming out with a huge AoE net. Was this a bait? As he's coming in with the banishment now, all of his AoE spells going down, as the Thunderous one being traded, but this is going to be so much damage onto these Orc Biggins and Boar Boys. I don't know if it was worth it, but it's a cool play.
yeah, it's an immediate route on the Boar Boys and a terror route on the Big Guns. A huge Thunderbolt and Ruination of Cities 2 takes out 2 very important AP units for the Greenskins, followed up by a charge onto the Big Guns, nearly routing them off too. And that was actually a huge play. The Thunderous one still at half HP. I would say that was actually quite worth it for the Lizardmen.
Yeah, the only problem with that is that now the Error Boys are able to fire in without too much to threaten them. However, the Pterodon Riders in the back could come in and threaten them quite effectively, and the Solar Engine also firing in could do some pretty good work as well. The Greenskins front line has kind of buckled, and actually another Boar Boy kind of diving in, overextending a fair bit, and it might get picked off here relatively for free, which would be a really nice play for the Lizardmen of Zero.
Yeah, and actually a really surprising situation with the Greenskins buckling so hard, but I guess it is expected, given the amount of AoEs that just crush the Cavalry and Big Guns. And as soon as the Greenskin frontline is gone and the archers are taken care of, you can see the Giants are going to be having a pretty rough time. They do not want to be taking Javelin and Dart Fire, and one of them is already almost down at lower HP than the Thunderous one.
Yeah, this just shows how susceptible Giants are to missiles. The Chameleon Skinks, the one unit of Chameleon Skinks, and the single Skink Chief with the Pterodon Rider are actually doing more damage to the Giants than all of these Error Boys are doing to the Dinos. So, pretty impressive stuff. Man, you can see this one Giant down under 500 HP now, and this is damage that cannot be healed. It is permanent, and the one Giant is routing off now as Zero takes a pretty commanding lead in this game, I'd say.
Yeah, but you have to be careful though. We've seen Giants in the past come back from rout and get in some pretty nasty hits in the late game. We'll keep an eye on that. An Effigy of the Git coming down on the Skink Chief to fire in arrows, and a nice Fanatic Bomb too.
I'm not entirely sure about that play. I know it's a very annoying unit, but it does only cost 350 gold, and he's not even going to kill it, actually. So kind of a waste of a very important ability there that could have been used to get some nice fire down onto the Thunderous one. Instead, the Skink Chief going to be retreating now, relatively safe. I don't think it'll be getting picked off anytime soon, as the Lizardmen Dinos start to come back in, and the Solar Engine getting some really nice volleys onto the Orc Error Boys from the side.
And we'll be seeing now, the fact that Effigy of the Git is now on cooldown means that the Thunderous one and Mazdamundi have free reign over the battlefield right now. They could charge directly into the Orc Archer Boys without much threat, and we can see the Thunderous one charging straight into the middle into all of their arcs of fire, without really worrying about being shot, since it is able to dodge by just continuing to maneuver around. Nevertheless, it still actually does take quite a few hits. But Mazdamundi is still at very high HP, and as long as he doesn't get completely surrounded by giants, he should be able to pull out the victory here. Nevertheless, it's still a little bit of a risk. We'll have to see how Mazdamundi does.
A nice Vindictive Glare going down, really trying to kill down this Thunderous One, Ancient Stegodon. Now, the Solar Engine actually will be pretty big onto the Giants if he's able to continue firing in. It will reduce the Giant stats pretty significantly, and it might be enough to help turn this engagement alongside the Poison. The debuffs, just from all of this ranged fire, are really important. And actually, oh man, a beautiful Ruination of Cities and Banishment there, taking out basically 1.5 Greenskin missile units. That's actually quite huge.
Yeah, and smart play coming in from 0-2. He doesn't want to be taking those RNG heavy fights against the single entities because they could go either way, even though it's unlikely. He's avoiding as much risk as he can by just keeping Mazdamundi safe and not diving into those two giants. Instead, using his ammunition to take them out, specifically with that Solar Engine, which should be able to snipe out that second giant soon.
Yeah, and the Chameleon Skinks have used up all of their ammo, but of course the Skink Chief, as I mentioned earlier, pretty much never runs out of ammo. It is actually down to 24 volleys. So, oh, and the Solar Engine. Goodbye, Giant. Man, it's rare to see a non-undead unit actually die on the field like that, but it does. Pretty cool stuff. And we will see the Pterodons and the Thunderous One going in onto the remaining Orc Error Boys as Zero shuts down the remaining killing power of this Greenskin build. And I definitely expect for Zero to take the 1-0 lead right now, as this game is looking very bad for the Viking.
Yeah, the Thunderous One, even if it does get taken out by the Giant here, it has done more than enough. Getting in a lot of value in the late game and baiting out the Greenskins in the early game. Really the main major play that decided most things here, along with the safe play in the late game to really ensure that the advantage is not lost. I think this was just this was really nicely played by Zero here.
Yeah, definitely. Now, the Solar Engine is out of ammo, but of course, it's still a Bastiladon. It's not the best in melee, but it's not nothing. It can come in and really help out against the Giant in the late game. And Zero moving in now for the killing blow. Actually stopping, but he will probably come in just a minute here. Just making sure to take as few risks as possible, as you kind of talked about earlier.
Yeah. At this point, though, he would have a pretty nice engagement. And now with the Orc Archer Boys getting shut down by the Chameleon Skinks, the Thunderous One does not have to worry about getting shot. And the 1-2 punch onto the Giant is going to be bringing it very near death. Another hit from Mazdamundi will likely seal the deal there. And for the Greenskins, they basically have no troops left. Pterodon Riders chasing off anything that routes. And there we go, the Giant now getting finished off by Mazdamundi. A Gaze of Mork onto the Thunderous One, doing almost no damage just because they have so much armor. And
oh, that's Gaze of Mork. Okay, I was wondering why it wasn't killing everything, and it's because it was Gaze of Mork instead of Vindictive Glare. That makes a lot more sense.
Vindictive Glare, though, does actually have very low AP values. So against armored targets, it still does okay. Definitely not amazing, and that's going to be a pretty nice win from Zero. Still well fought by the Viking, but after the collapse of his front line, there wasn't really much that he could do there.
Yeah, and man, the Mazdamundi not with as much damage as I would have expected, actually, given how well he used his AoEs. It was actually the Thunderous One itself that kind of seemed to carry that game in terms of damage value, and also the Skink Chief. Costs 350 gold, baits out an effigy to get, and gets 1,050 damage value. Pretty insane.
Yeah. Essentially getting his priority target, the Giants, firing at them for the whole game. That's gonna do that, and the Skink Chiefs are definitely extremely strong and very often cost efficient.
What side would you like to go over here?
I guess I'll pick up the Dark Elf side, and it does look like to be a little bit of a skirmish build, but mostly going in for those lob tactics, or at least building a lot of elite infantry. There's actually there's a lot going on here. First of all,
Wow,
a
yeah.
death hag on their mount going to be coming in. They have very high anti-infantry and okay duelist, sort of an expensive chariot unit that you don't often see. 3 Sisters of Slaughter, 2 Dread Spears, and some cavalry. Dark Riders only by the looks of it. And Marathi in the air, a Beastmaster in the air too, for that sniping squad. But this is a very, very strange build. I don't really know how to feel about it, especially with that weak cavalry force.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I suppose the 3 chariots will be quite strong against any chaos infantry builds, and Sisters of Slaughter are going to be able to cut through chaos chaff very effectively, which we do see a lot of, as we see a front line of 5 chaos marauders, 2 chaos marauders with great weapons, so 0 coming in with a very wide build here. We also have 2 chaos warriors in the back. Looks like 4 marauder horsemen, 2 with throwing axes. Sarthorial the Everwatcher with Final Transmutation and Plague of Rust. Double Chaos Feral Manticores, and a single Chaos Warhound with Poison. So definitely a very wide build, much more what I would expect than on the Dark Elf side. And yeah, also a Hell Cannon, the ROR, Soul of Damnation. Could get a lot of value in this game.
I think so, and man, I think Vikings build, it may have a hard time here, especially with the double Manticore. They'll sort of cancel out the Master and Marathi from doing anything too effective. And the Skirmishers, this many Marauder Horsemen, can survive for quite a long time against 2 Scourge Runners. I imagine in the late game, the Marauder Horsemen will likely be the major problem against the Death Hag, unless the Viking finds a way to deal with them, which could be a possibility. The Scourge Runners do have a decent amount of ammunition, and his cavalry could catch them, but some very nice initial shots on Marathi, actually getting in a good few 100 points of damage on her to start off the game.
Yeah, she should be able to Soul Stealer it back, no problems, over the course of the game. But continuously wearing her down will be quite effective as well. And you can see these Scourge Runners being zoned out quite effectively, only really finding Chaos Marauders to shoot at, which they'd much rather be shooting at high-value targets. Now, I do wonder, actually, if Marathi's Wand, it's like a Bound Doom Bolt, no? It might be able to do some really good work against the Hell Cannon, actually. But man, she is really taking a lot of damage. She's down to half HP already.
Yeah, the Hell Cannon has hit her for 100% of the hits. They also got buffed on the HP front too, so I imagine the wand won't be able to kill it out, at least with a single cast. And we're seeing, despite the juking coming in from the Viking, Marathi just cannot avoid these hits.
I do wonder if he might want to change up his strategy a little bit here. Seems like he was hoping to bait out Soul of Damnation shots with Marathi, but it has hit every single time. Every single time still.
Yep, Hell Cannon shots, of course, are homing, and this does seem like a little bit of a higher hit chance that I am used to. And there we go.
Oh, it misses!
Miss.
Okay, I think he was too close to it. I think he needs to be at the edge of its range. And indeed, Zero is actually switching targets onto the Scourge Runner chariots, perhaps knowing that himself.
Yep,
and yeah, so man, but Marathi, that is a lot of damage to be taking. I know she can Soul Stealer, but it'll take a few Soul Stealers to get that back. And in fact, he's going back another shot onto Marathi, and another miss. So finally, she has her dodging shoes on, and yeah.
Yeah, but the problem is too, the Master is getting out-skirmished by the Marauder Horsemen, and the Master is going to be in quite a bit of trouble. He can't even turn around to land because of the Warhounds. And a nice charge from the Dark Riders does come in, but the fact that they take so much damage on the charge just means that it was basically an even trade. Soul Stealer now having to go down on a single Chaos Feral Manticore. This is looking
just to heal
pretty
her.
rough.
Yeah.
for the Viking. And another
Ooh,
shot
another
landing
hit.
in on Marathi.
Now she will finally use her wand onto the Soul of Damnation. And it will hit it for, I think another one of those will actually kill it, most likely. But Marathi getting skirmished now by the Hell Cannon, a Feral Manticore, and by these Marauder Horsemen. She has to be very careful. You can already see her healing cap. And man, she's just taking so much damage over the course of this game. Now the Dark Riders coming in to counter skirmish a bit, and also the Master with the Scourge Runners making a bit of an aggressive play on this flank. They need to be very careful, actually.
Yeah, these the Manticores are actually really nice at zoning out the single entities and the chariots too. They could
Marathi
even
gets hit
chase
again.
Marathi.
And the Soul of Damnation still has half its ammunition. I mean, it has so much ammo. It's not like you can just bait all the ammo out before the army has to advance without taking a ton of damage, which I think it's the plan here. Just try and bait out all of the ammo so that way the Sisters of Slaughter can move up unperturbed. Now, a final transmutation overcast going down onto the Scourge Runners, and the Viking does not notice, and they have half their HP gone already, and it's going to keep ticking down. They are down to under 1/4 HP on one of them just from the single final transmutation overcast. That is so huge, and they might actually get terror routed here.
Yeah, and even if they don't get routed off, a second final transmutation will likely finish them off. And that's a pretty rough loss, but they do manage to keep it together. They do have their ammunition, and they get a little bit of poke on Sartorial, but still, this is looking very rough. Marathi, her heal cap is now exposed, and the frontline engagement has not even begun yet.
Yeah, the Scourge Runners are not going to be very effective in melee over the course of this game either. Not that they necessarily needed to be, but it would have been very nice. And that one Scourge Runner might not come back actually, and the other one is also wavering.
Yeah, the Soul of Damnation target firing the Scourge Runner chariots is all that is really needed to take them off the battlefield, and that's gonna be it. One of the major threats for the Viking getting taken out. Retarget onto the other Scourge Runner unit. There's some okay cycle charging coming in from the Dark Riders, but they can't really carry the game on their backs, even if they are able to take out these Marauder units.
And the whole point of all of this is to protect the Sisters of Slaughter as they come in from Hell Cannon fire. But soon enough, the Dark Elves are going to have to advance with the Sisters of Slaughter or risk breaking the attacking rule. And so if the Soul of Damnation still has ammo at that point, then all of this will have been for nothing. And Marathi's using another Soul Stealer. I mean, she does have, I believe, Greater Arcane Conduit, but that is already, 3 or 4 Soul Stealers pretty much just to heal her, with no real damage being done.
Yeah, on basically single units. Some cast it on the Manticores, getting them low so that they rampage. But it's just purely for healing. A lot of the times you want to be casting Soul Stealers on large groups of infantry. And now another Hell Cannon shot coming in, and a rare miss. Oh my goodness, a breath. A sigh of relief from Viking surely, as Marathi continues to pull further away from the Hell Cannon to make it slightly easier to dodge the shots by the looks of it.
Oh man, but another hit, and Viking will need to begin advancing now with the rest of his build because both Scourge Runners are down, so he's not actually attacking with anything.
Yeah, pretty rough. His the Beastmaster too, just hanging out around the fringes, and the Scourge Runners are getting chased off. It's just gonna come down to that final advance, but the main problem is that there's still 4 units of Marauder Horsemen. They have basically nothing that can contest them, and they can do whatever they want here. Chasing off Marathi, the Beastmaster firing at the Death Hag. They really have the whole battlefield to themselves. And there we go. That's going to be the last of those Scourge Runners at half ammunition too. A massive loss for the Viking, not to mention Marathi. Just barely clinging on to life here.
Oh my gosh, you can see, look at this. These Marauder Horsemen are going to be able to just shoot at the Sisters of Slaughter with all of their ammunition, with 0 counterplay, because all of the mobility for the Dark Elves is gone.
Yeah, and we are seeing pick come down on the Manticore. It's going to be a little bit of a trade since it does actually manage to hit the Beastmaster. But the Manticore will likely go down unless it manages to snipe out Marathi. And onto the actual important game-making plays here. Marauder Horsemen are going to be firing in on the Sisters of Slaughter freely without having to really worry about anything really. There's a 17 model unit of Dark Riders left. And that's about it. There's no other more mobility other than Marathi, and I think she actually did get hit by that Manticore because she is at basically no HP now.
Yeah. Now, chat theorizing how the Hell Cannon is so good, and now people are claiming that Zero has been manually aiming it. Definitely the god of manual aim in that case.
Yes, especially since Marathi was juking extremely hard. But that would be amazing if Zero actually trained his manual aiming to the point where his shots were undodgeable.
I would unironically accuse him of aim hacking in this game if that were the case.
Because those shots were just absolutely devastating.
Is that going to be the new meta, having aimbots in this game for your Hell Cannons?
Warhammer aimbots? Well, apparently so. They were extremely effective, and now with the moving forwards of the Vikings army, his Dread Spears are getting hit by the Soul of Damnation. It does have more ammo than your regular Hell Cannon, and we're seeing that that is going to be paying off here. The Manticore.
No, another Soul Stealer onto this lone feral Manticore, just to keep Marathi alive. This is definitely the saddest Marathi game I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, just the mere presence of the Manticore bringing her to very low leadership. Getting in not a lot of damage. She will manage to heal cap herself, but the Beastmaster actually getting rampaged here. And he's going to be getting kited out by the Marauder Horsemen. That's going to be a swift end for him.
Now that was actually the Dark Elves rampaged it, by the way. And they did that earlier to a Scourge Runner, and it killed the Scourge Runner? Unless I'm missing something. So, kind of questionable play, to be honest, to be rampaging your own units into such disadvantaged situations, but I don't know. It's not really meta to see a death tag regardless. So
yeah. And there we go. Beastmaster out. The Death Hag does have a rampage ability, which boosts the combat stats of your units, but if they're just getting kited out by Marauder Horsemen, definitely quite a rough time. But the Sisters of Slaughter will be able to finally engage onto their primary targets, the chaff.
Oh man, that Hell Cannon hit.
But yeah, a big hit from the Hell Cannon. Sisters of Slaughter are at half HP now, but they're still quite threatening. It's just that these Marauder Horsemen will be a pretty big threat. Hell Cannon now missing a few shots, but Sartorial at full HP. With not too many single entities left for the Dark Elves, he'll be able to cycle charge and terror out the Sisters of Slaughter over as we get into the late game.
Yeah, and he can also just kite them with the Marauder Horsemen. And, you know, I do kind of... oh, man, it looks like the Hell Cannon either gets pushed off the cannon piece. Yes, they do. So the Hell Cannon finally will be shut down here. But, man, it got more than its value this game. I do wonder if maybe the Vikings should have been a bit more aggressive. His strategy of baiting out the Hell Cannon shots clearly not quite paying off. But at the same time, the Sisters of Slaughter do take a lot of damage. And now it looks like a final Transmutation Overcast is going to be going down onto Marathi just to kill her by herself. Will it be enough, actually? It's pretty good RNG so far for the Viking, but now down to 300 HP, 200 HP, and Marathi's routing and shattered. And with that, army losses hit, and Zero very decisively going to be taking that game, and with it, the tournament.
Yeah, very well played to Zero, second time winner of the Ranked League Champions. We're going to take a quick look at Marathi's damage value. She got all of her Winds of Magic off and only 1,000 damage value. Very unfortunate.
Look at the Hell Cannon.
Hey, and there we go. I said 4,000 damage value was pretty rare, but as we can see here, much like the Rogue Idol, coming in hard, sniping out those lords. Oh my goodness, that was extremely effective and much better than I would have expected for sure.
Yeah, I have never seen an artillery piece get that much value in a game, ever. Not once. That was unbelievable. Man, we
Scoreless
had some
victory.
crazy games today. Wow.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely some very fun games, some very interesting builds, and generally a very good time. So for anyone watching through the VOD, thank you very much for watching, and we'll begin closing it off now.